Our next guest says the Fed could be a caveat to the market, but still thinks the rally will go higher and has just revised his annual price target to 57.51. Let's bring in Keith Fitz-Gerald, a Fitzgerald Group principal. Keith, it's good to have you. So even with sort of hawkish sounding Powell there.
Even with, and here's the thing, is the market's going to continue to narrow up. It's going to be companies like Nvidia and Tesla and Apple and many of the great tech names we talk about all the time that lead the way. Companies like Nike and Walgreens are going to get left behind. This earnings season is going to be very telling, but still, path of least resistance is higher, Kelly.
And why do you think that is?
What, I think what, that the path is higher or that they're going to get left behind?
Well, both.
Well, there's still a lot of money that needs to go to work, and structurally, we are very identical to two prior periods of significant growth in history, where we had lots of innovation, we had labor challenges, the 1950s and the 1990s. And so if we think about this like a beach party, everybody's just rolling onto the sand. They're starting to break out all the great food. People are smiling. Frisbees are starting to go around. But there's a long way to go before everybody gets sunburned. So it's a nice, good place to be. It doesn't feel like that, but history's often that way.
Yeah.
But Keith, what do you do with your gains at this point? Say you were right, and you were listening to Keith Fitz-Gerald, and you expected the S&P to reach these levels. Do you just stay completely invested, even in the S&P, say you're invested that way from here, or do you redistribute those gains in some way that takes away some risk of the narrow market rally?
That's a really good question, and my preference is the latter. Buy and hope is not an investment strategy, but buy and manage very much is. So taking profits, just like you harvest fruit from a tree and a ripe orchard, that's what you want to be doing now. So there's lots of great dividend stocks, there's great defense stocks, there's lots of undervalued healthcare out there. So you don't want to get off a winning horse mid-race, but my opinion is definitely you want to be thinking about how do I take some of that money off the table, what do I do with it, and where do I go next?
So, Keith, let's talk about Nvidia, which you were early and right on and said there's still more room to go and continue to say that. I don't know if you saw last hour, we spoke with Dorona Semiglu over at MIT, who said he thinks the impact of this in terms of the economic impact is actually going to be much smaller than people think. If that's right, yeah, I mean, in measurable terms, that it can replace some tasks, but really not, the bulk of what comprises human economic activity.
I think that's a very interesting observation. I disagree with it, and very respectfully so. This is a lot like saying that talking movie pictures wouldn't replace silent pictures. AI is not just a technology, it's the greatest technology in recorded human history. And I think that every dollar you're spending on it now is returning 5, 6, 7 to the balance sheet. So we're going to be looking at $9, $10, $12, $15 a few years from now. So the question is not so much, is it coming or is it inevitable? The question is, what does that look like? So I would respectfully disagree. I'd push back on that pretty significantly. And I think that that's a very interesting, but not a viewpoint I agree with.
What are you betting happens to the small and mid caps here?
That's an interesting question. We struggle with that because I think that quality matters. The problem we have in today's market is that many of the small caps that are really good, solid companies are getting purchased before they ever go public. So the question is, who's out there and what? IonQ, for example, is quantum computing on the uptake. I think it's batting around right now in the low dollar ranges. So that's interesting. When quantum computing comes in, that's an example of a small cap that might make it, or Caribou Sciences, Biosciences. That's another one. Gene editing is potentially 4 or 5 years from now very, very valuable. Full disclosure, I own both of them. But I think you've got to pick your bets very carefully because the big caps are what the security, the balance sheets, the strength needed.
And Keith, I should mention as well, you're still bullish on Tesla, thinking this could be a $300 stock next year.
Yes, I am. I think this stock is going to double or triple, maybe even more in the next few years. And again, we're early innings. Anybody who's thinking about this just in terms of cars is very smart, but I would encourage them to broaden their horizons significantly. This is about power. This is about robotics. I think it perhaps is the best undervalued AI play on the planet right now. And love him or hate him, Musk knows what he's doing.
All right. Keith, thank you. We appreciate it. Always fun to check in. Keith Fitz-Gerald.
Thank you. Now let's get a check on the bond market. Rick Santelli tracking the action. Rick.